Hello and welcome to PechPong. Today we're going to be talking about the highly requested, long-awaited, and much anticipated video on how to play against long pips and anti. So a lot of people, when they see that their opponent has long pips or anti, start to develop a really bad headache or really start to freak out. My goal is in this video to answer any questions you might have, as well as give you a lot of tactics on how to play against long pips or anti. I want to say a big thanks to my dad for helping me make this video. He has been using long pips and anti for his whole career, and growing up that helped me a lot to deal with long pips and learn how to play against them. And it was also his idea to include not only how to play against long pips, but also how to play with long pips and anti, as getting both sides of the story will help every player who watches this video, because you'll know what to do, what not to do, what they want to do to you, and it's getting confusing, but yes, you're going to be more informed if you know both sides of the story.
You know the dark side.
When it comes to long pips and anti, I usually play against them very similarly, like my strategy against them. There are some subtle differences between anti and long pips, but generally speaking, the strategy I use against them and the strategies that long pips use, as well as anti, are the same. So for this video, I will be referring to long pips and anti as just anti, because it would be a bit long-winded for me to keep saying long pips and anti every time when I'm just referring to kind of the one playing style. For the structure of this video, we will go into the fundamentals of how anti and long pips work, and we will go over the do's and don'ts, generally speaking, the best practices, and then seamlessly we'll go into the strategies that either you should use as an anti-user or a inverted rubber user, and we'll be doing, like I said, the flip side of both. And so let's get started on the video. I would also like to mention that this video is not about medium pips or short pimples, as their game styles are a little bit different than long pips and anti. You can kind of disregard those as far as this video is concerned. So the first fundamental that we'll go over that's really important is how much spin reversal is on the ball when the anti-user deflects either a push or a loop. So what is spin reversal? And to make it simple, if I were to loop a ball very spinny to someone with a lot of spin reversal on their anti, that ball would come back with a lot of heavy backspin. And if I were to loop very spinny to a player with low spin reversal, the ball would come back rather dead. So their anti is kind of taking away spin versus just converting my topspin into backspin. So lots of spin reversal is very lucrative for a lot of players who use anti because it makes it more difficult to play against them. So generally speaking, you're going to be playing against players who use pips or antis that have lots of spin reversal. So there are two main ways to figure out how much spin reversal will be on the ball when you loop to it. And the first way is to go over to your opponent's racket and take the ball and rub it on the opponent's racket, or the rubber. And if it has a lot of grip on the pips, then most likely there will be very little spin reversal, and the ball will have more of a deadening effect. If you go over and you rub it on the racket and it's really smooth and slick, then it's probably going to have a lot of spin reversal. So anti works a little bit different, and there's several factors that will determine how much spin reversal is on an anti. And generally speaking, the harder the rubber on the top sheet is, the more spin reversal. The thinner the sponge, the more spin reversal, as well as the harder the sponge, the more spin reversal. And you'll see a lot of players sometimes try and play with no sponge, which will also give a lot more spin reversal effect, whether it's anti or long pips. And the blade also makes a big difference too. And Dr. Neubauer, who my dad has been friends with and worked with a lot, has developed a lot of blades that have low dwell time while having lots of control, and they are kind of specializing in players who use pips and anti. So if you are a pips and anti player and want to look into getting blades that are made for long pimples and antis, I would look into Dr. Neubauer blades. Alright, so getting back on topic, and the second way to determine how much spin reversal is on the anti is to simply loop to it, or play against it. And if you loop a really heavy ball and they put their anti on it and it has a lot of backspin, well, congratulations, they have a lot of spin reversal. If you loop the ball and you push it and it doesn't have much backspin, well, they don't have much spin reversal on the rubber. Let's go into some common do's and don'ts and best practices. So let's assume that the player has a lot of spin reversal on their anti. And a common practice is to not loop the ball twice because it'll come back with a ton of spin, very hard to loop back sometimes. So typically what I tell players to do is to loop one and then push one, loop one and push one. And if you do this and be patient, you can sometimes wait for a really good opportunity for your opponent to make a high kind of block, and you can try and finish the point. And to be honest, this is what makes playing against Pips players really difficult, is that you have to remember if you made a loop or a push on the last ball. And it can be really difficult when you're hitting to their forehand and their backhand, and the point is going, and they're also making a bunch of different kind of swipes at the ball. You have to remember what kind of stroke you made on the last shot to the anti. And yeah, this is what's going to determine your success many times, or failure, is that it is your ability to remember what you did last. And on the flip side, as an anti-player, if your opponent is looping one and pushing one to you, it's kind of your opportunity now, once they push, to become aggressive. And you can do that in 3 different kind of ways. The first one is to flip your racket and use an inverted rubber and loop with your backhand. The second way is to run around with your forehand and try to get a very offensive shot in. The third way is also to try and use your anti and attack that ball, because once it hits your rubber or your anti, it's going to act like a topspin. So you just need to hit up and the ball will kind of go down with topspin arc. So you can kind of choose which way you want to attack, and it's important that you do attack or try to be aggressive, because the next ball, after your opponent pushes, they get to have another attack, and that's probably not what you want them to do. And if you're able to make a good attack on their push, this is when you start to really collect a lot of points, because A, you're making a strong attack, and B, your opponent, the inverted player, feels the pressure to loop twice or 3 times against the anti, which is what is difficult about playing anti, is trying to reloop that shot 2 or 3 different times.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power! Don't try it!
And I would like to add, as the attacking inverted player, if you do loop one and then push one, I think it's really smart to be very aware of how you push, where you push, and kind of what quality you push. Because if you're a player who uses anti or long pips, likes to attack on the pushes that you make, if you just push directly to the middle of the table with not much spin, they're going to probably just go to town and just rip the ball. So you have to be very aware of what you're doing with the ball on those pushes. So if you can push short, that could be a really good idea. If you could push nice and wide to a different corner, that may be a good idea and stop your opponent from making a really strong attack, as well as also maybe pushing very heavy, maybe medium long, making them make a soft loop, or pushing really deep and fast. That could also give them trouble to make a very strong finishing attack. If the pips or anti-player does make a strong attack either with their forehand, their backhand, or attacking with the anti, I think it's really important to just really hold your ground and try to make a re-counter loop or a really good block, kind of get back into the point. And if they do use their anti to attack the ball, just know that it's, again, topspin, because you made a backspin, and if they attack, it's now a topspin. So there's really no need to freak out too much. You can just kind of try and make a re-counter attack. So a really potent tactic that you can use as an inverted player is to loop with less spin when you're playing against anti. And what this does is, when you loop with less spin, or kind of loop with dead loops, then your opponent feels like they have to use their anti because you're attacking. And secondly, there's not really much spin reversal happening because you're not adding any spin to begin with. And eventually they're going to kind of give you a ball that really sets you up, and you can kind of finish the point. So you're never actually pushing and giving them that opportunity to attack. and you're keeping the spin reversal down. The only problem with this is that you have to learn how to loop with less spin, and that can take a little bit of practice. It's simply done by kind of opening the racket and trying to not make too much friction on the ball, and using the opponent's the little spin reversal that they have to kind of keep looping. And the counter to this tactic as an anti-player is to be able to drop the ball short or control the depth. And this is one of the skills that is most effective if an anti-player can use it, is the ability to control depth. As, let's say I loop as an inverted player and the ball comes short, I have to then push it. I have to push it because the ball has backspin and it's short. And that really opens up your opportunity to get an attack. I'd say it takes a lot of skill to learn how to control the depth as an anti-player, but it's definitely worth your time. And to put it simply, there are a couple different ways you can learn how to kind of control the depth as an anti-player. And the first one is to kind of chisel the ball downwards and take it nice and early off the bounce. And you don't want to move forward into the ball, as that would add energy, but you really want to chisel down, straight down, and cut the energy. And that would do a good job of kind of keeping it lower and shorter. The second way to keep it short and control the depth is to really do nothing and let the ball deflect off of the anti. And this is done when the opponent has a lot of speed and spin on the ball, and you can kind of just hold your racket there and let the ball kind of bounce over. And that'll be able to control the depth as well. So now you're beginning to see how it's more of a skill-based game when a player uses anti. And there are definite drawbacks to using anti, but there are also some benefits that, if used appropriately and properly, can be really devastating against inverted players.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
So from my experience, the players that I really have to look out for, the ones who use anti, are the ones who can mix shorter shots and longer shots with the anti, as I don't know if they're going to drop it short or if they're going to jut it out long. These are typically the players that I find most difficult to play against. And honestly, typically when I play against anti-players, they're either in love with trying to drop the ball short, or they're in love with trying to keep it nice and deep at the baseline. And they're usually doing one or the other. But when I figure out which one they like more, either going shorter or longer, I really try to adjust my depth after I serve and also when I receive to that appropriate distance. So if they like to drop the ball short, I usually try and reset to a closer position over the table, because then I can maybe get some medium-long loops in there or some nice flips. And if they like to play the ball deep, I usually like to reset a little bit deeper to be ready for those longer ones. So let's talk about some hard do's and don'ts. And the first one I want to go over is don't serve heavy side spin to a long pips or anti-player. They are going to be jumping for joy when you start serving side spin to them. And this is for multiple reasons. Well, the first one is because you're going to be getting the opposite side spin back, and you're also going to have to deal with, if you put a little bit of side under or a little side top, you're going to have to deal with the conversion. If you just simply put under or top or dead, then you're only having to deal with one conversion. And the second thing is that when you put side spin on the ball, they can hit the ball in one direction with the anti and have the spin kind of take over the second part of the movement. So it kind of gives you a knuckleball effect, or kind of like a snake effect. And this is definitely not something that you want to be dealing with when you're playing against an anti-player.
What have I done?
And for players who use anti, it would be great if you would serve side spin serves, kind of medium, long, or short, and the player kind of gives you the spin back and you use your anti on that second ball, because then it still has residual spin and they have to deal with that knuckleball. I've played against anti-players who do this, and it's really not fun because the ball is moving quite a lot and it's not kosher. So I would encourage players who have inverted rubber, if you play against a player with anti and they serve side spin, try to delete the spin by going against the spin, or try to loop the ball with heavy top spin to kind of get the ball into a more predictable territory where it's only one spin again. So now that we've kind of got into serve, I do 3 kinds of spins. I do dead or no spin, I do underspin, as well as top spin. And the reason I do this is because then I only have to deal with one conversion or one reversal. And it makes it simple for me to do the kind of mental math. But here's the thing that's really important is when I'm doing these serves, I'm not just doing dead, under, and top. I'm doing dead, under, and top with a lot of variations. And so what I mean by this is I'll do a lot of fast dead serves. I'll do a lot of kind of slow, medium, long dead serves. I'll do some different placements with them, as well as some heavy backspins, some lighter backspins, making them have to adjust for each ball, because as soon as they make a small mistake and kind of pop the ball up or a miscalculation, then I get to make a really strong attack. And that's, as a player who uses inverted against an anti-player, that's what I really want, is them to kind of pop the ball up and give me a free attack. And as an anti-player, it's your job to really practice all those different variations and kind of be able to make the adjustments you need to in order to drop them all short or long, depending on what your opponent is giving you and also what you want to give them back. So one thing you can do as an anti-player to have a lot more success when returning serves is to play the ball very wide. And that's because a lot of times as an inverted player, I'm trying to make a strong attack. And usually when I'm trying to make a strong attack, I try to use forehand. And that goes for a lot of other players too, is they really want you to set the ball up right in the middle of the table so they can just rip at it with their forehand. So learning to play the ball nice and wide can stop your opponent from being aggressive. So while we're on the topic of serves, there's a few key serves that I use against people with anti. And a lot of times pips or anti players will try and cover the whole table with their anti. It can be annoying because they're using it for every single shot. So what I like to do is I really like to spread the table, hitting it really wide to their forehand, really deep to their backhand, and sometimes even fast deep to their forehand. And sometimes you can really catch them off guard because they're trying to hunt for their anti the whole table, and you can kind of make them kind of glitch out. But the problem with this is if they're ready for it, they can kind of immediately transition and hit a really strong forehand. So you have to be careful of serving long to anyone's forehand in general. So another really good do not is to really try not to serve too much short to a player with anti, as when you serve short to a player with anti, their ability to keep the ball short or kind of jut the ball long or give you a misdirection, hit wide, it's really easy for them to do this. And that's because they don't have to deal with the spin of the ball when it's close to the net. And typically when an inverted player plays and the ball is short, they have to deal with the spin that's close to the net, and it usually jumps off the racket. Whereas with a player with anti, the ball doesn't jump off the racket, and they're able to just shoot the ball in any direction they want to. And they're also able to take very large kind of swipes at the ball and kind of slide it. And it can be very deceptive because they can slide it short, they can also slide it wide and deep. And so as a general rule, just don't serve short to a player with anti, as it can be very easy for them to kind of make disruptive strokes or shots. And as a player with anti, take advantage of that opportunity when it is short to be disruptive and wide and use that long stroke and slide the ball.
I shouldn't.
Do it.
That should help to win a lot of points. The only time I really serve short is when I've served long a lot to an anti-player and I can kind of see that they're waiting a little bit back, trying to be ready for that long one. And a short one is then okay, because then they're kind of falling into the table and they're not able to be as disruptive with their strokes. So one of the biggest enemies, if not the biggest enemy of a player who uses anti, is when the opponent can get a really strong shot and attack in the general vicinity of the anti. And you might be thinking, well, it's a really strong shot, it can be hard. But this is not always the case, as if you watch two inverted players play and one of them makes a really strong attack, The other one can simply put their racket right in front of the ball, and the ball just, goes back over, and the point is won. But with an anti, if you make a really strong shot, when they touch the ball, this ball can be very unpredictable and very hard to control. And oftentimes it leads to another shot coming back really strong, or 2 or 3, because it just comes back a little bit higher every time. So one of the end goals should be for an inverted player to find a way to get a strong attack against a player with anti. And we've gone over a couple different scenarios that can help you get that. But we're going to go over a couple more. So one of the ways you can get strong attacks in is making random deep cuts deep to the opponent's anti. And because if you make deep cuts, it'll come back topspin, and you can get that finishing stroke maybe. And this can be a little bit counterintuitive, because a lot of times when you play against inverted players, making deep cuts can lead to them getting that attack and you on the defense. Whereas with anti, if you make a deep cut, it can come back topspin, and you can get that free attack. The next way you can look to get a really strong attack in is if you use lots of spin on your opening loops. And the reason this is because sometimes it can be hard for players with anti to control, especially if it's deep, a lot of spin. Sometimes it pops up really high, and you can get in a kind of like a smash or a smash loop. And this is not always the case. Some anti players are really good at keeping spinny balls low and short sometimes. But sometimes if you play an anti player, they might have a lot of trouble if you're able to loop with good spin, and they kind of pop the ball up. And if they do this, it usually comes a little bit short with a lot of backspin. And the way you smash this is you kind of come in with a nice open angle and try and smash it as if you were to miss the table, because the backspin that they have on the ball will kind of go directly down as it wants to go in the net, and it'll find the table. So you kind of have to do a little bit of math when you smash and try to almost in your head miss the table and let the backspin kind of take the ball down onto the other side of the table. And lastly, it should have been said in the beginning of the video, but I wanted to say it now because after all the information I've given you, it should be more apparent that it's important to be patient and work for the point, wait for your opportunity, kind of build your opportunity to make that strong attack. A lot of times, anti-players or pips players, they get free points just because the opponent isn't patient and wants to kind of force their game, and it really doesn't work out. So that's the last tip, is to be more patient and try to work your point. And if the shot's not really there, just be patient and try to kind of keep building the point. And as a final kind of note, I wanted to say that I hope that the anti-players or pips players who watch this video, that you got something from this video as well. I really feel like the inclusion of anti and pips in table tennis is a net benefit. I know a lot of people feel like they shouldn't be included in the game, but what really makes table tennis different is the fact that anyone can play, and pips and anti really let a different type of person be competitive at a high level. And what also makes table tennis great is that you have to use your head a lot, and definitely playing against pips or anti can make you think a lot. And I think that's what's one of the most beautiful things about table tennis, is that you have to think. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun to make it with my dad. And yeah, this video has been long in the making, and I've thought really hard about how to make it. And I hope that it really lives up to the expectations and everyone can learn from it. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video very soon.
All right, I'll give it a try.
No. Try not. Do. Or do not. There is no try.